And that's it, and they stop, and nobody says anything. Because the next person's not going to say, they must have been designed. How do you do that? What you do for each group is you give each little group of students a dice. And you say to them, roll the dice. And if you get a 1, it means you're 100% sure that things did happen. If you get a 2, you decide what you want to say yourself. If you get a 3, you say it's possible, and the dice tells you what to say. And each group has a little dice, and they roll the dice, and you get a 1, and they say, oh, they must have been put there as landing strips for creatures from outer space, because you got 1. And if you roll the dice and you get a 6, you say, they can't have been put there. And the whole point of the dice throwing is exactly the same. Mandatory participation, it's a bit mechanical, it's a bit silly, but everyone has to take part. I was going to do a little more numbered heads work with you, and I was going to do that, but I'm not. I'm just going to say that in the end, teaching large classes is, well, there's an issue which we need to talk about after the break. No, it's a joke. There's no break. This is the end. This is the end. One of the issues that we need to talk about is when you get students involved in group work, how do you get them back? How do you quieten them down? How do you do that kind of thing? And it's an issue that needs talking about, and we would talk about it some other time. But what teachers of large classes need to do is they need to establish the rules. They need to establish the rules. So when I raise my hand, I want you all to raise your hands to show me you've seen. Maybe that's the way you calm students down. Some teachers do it by just waiting. How do you do it? How do you do it? Waiting. Shouting. Be quiet! Which, if you only do it once a semester, is fantastic. Because the students will just go, oh, what the hell, like, but if you do it every class, it has no effect at all. You need to find a way of doing it, and the students need to know. But I'm very impressed by a man called George Petty. He says that when teachers have management problems in lessons, the problem starts long before the teacher gets into the classroom. Because the bigger the class, the more the organization. You saw the photos I showed you at the beginning of teachers in classrooms with 6 or 8 or 10 students. You do have discipline problems with 10 students. It does happen. And you do have personality clashes and difficulties, but you can control them. And you can probably change your mind and go different ways. But with a large group, like this one, you have to come prepared. You have to know what you're going to do. Work out exactly how to do it. And that way you've got a chance of succeeding. Whereas if you go into a big group, especially if you don't know them very well and you don't quite know what to do and you keep changing your mind, it will be chaos. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that you have to have a plan and stick to it rigidly, but it means that teachers of large classes know what they're going to do before they get into the classroom. Otherwise, they're in trouble. And that during an activity, what teachers do really matters, especially when students are working in groups. What do you do? Do you go to the groups? Yes, that's really good because you can work with individuals. But if you work with individuals, you lose the class as a whole. So maybe you should stand back. What do you do? Well, what you do is you try 3 or 4 different things and keep a record of what works and what doesn't work. And you build up your practice in that way. And you find out the ways that suit you. What really matters about teaching big classes is what you do after the class. I'm sorry, after the activity. What do? Do you just throw it away? Or do you summarize it, make something of it, make something big of it? You close it in some way. There's closure, there's something to do. And when you've talked too long in a talk for Chilean teachers in Santiago, what do you do? How do you finish it? That's what I'm thinking. And I have absolutely no idea, and except to say that I'm very grateful to you for sitting here all this time and listening to me. Not always listening to me, sometimes you are doing stuff on your own. I hope you will find at least one or two of those activities usable in some form or other. But let me say about every single activity we used, not one of them is an activity that I think you need to adopt as an activity, but each one is a metaphor for things you can do. And the metaphors are these. You can lead from the front and it can be good fun. But the only leading from the front that is good fun is ones where the students may be sitting there, but you can actually hear the machines in their brains working. That's what needs to happen. Otherwise, you're just leading from the front, and what you've got is a whole lot of passive victims in front of you. But leading from the front is when you give students things to think about and do, so that they're not just sitting going, oh, it's another thing like that. And that's why something as simple as a fill-in, if you approach it in the right way, can have exactly the right effect. But I also think, as I hope I demonstrated, that actually you can use a whole group to the advantage of the whole group. And the advantage of the whole group is if you get a whole group shouting at the same time or saying something in chorus at the same time, it's good fun. It's great. Groups are good. Big groups are good. The bigger the better. Imagine being the Chinese guy and getting everyone to say, I love China. 25,000 people are going, I love China. What fun, you know? How stupid. But you can use the group for what it is. And then when you start to hand over control to students, give them something really proper to do. Treat them, give them something which allows them to invest. And although we didn't have enough time, that bit dialogue from Equus allowed you just for a second to invest because it's interesting enough, because there's a point to be made, something to do with it. And when you get students working in groups, make sure that they know what to do and they have to do it. And then if you want, you can have fun with dice and things like that. But I'm pretty certain that that's the end. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.